Hi there, and thanks for watching this video. I'm going to briefly discuss being a mandatory reporter and what that means. I'm also going to talk about what I do as the Title IX coordinator and what my office does, to better train you for a situation where a student might tell you about a situation of sexual misconduct. So if you haven't met me, my name is Jessica Coburn. I have a bachelor's in communications from Wake Forest University, a master's from Marshall University, and then I'm in my doctorate program right now for higher ed leadership. I also am a very active member in the association ATICSA, which is the Association of Title IX Administrators. I have several certifications through ATICSA. I'm also Safe Space certified through a program called Campus Pride. I am the Title IX coordinator at Flagler, and this law is the law that I kind of base all the sexual misconduct policy on. It's also, a federal law that the college itself has to follow, and I like to show it to people just so they can see the wording of the law to kind of see where the sexual misconduct policy is grounded. So the amendment says that no person in the United States shall, on the basis of sex, be excluded from participation in, be denied the benefits of, or be subject to discrimination under any education program or activity receiving federal financial assistance. So that's Flagler. So a lot of people, look at those 36 or 37 words and they're like, well, what does that mean now? Because the law itself, the wording hasn't evolved, but there are several different guidance documents that tell colleges what they have to do with this law. So it's a civil rights law that protects sex and gender discrimination. So it applies to all students, no matter their gender identity. It just says that we will respond and help remedy hostile environments. And these are the things that I, along with you, will help to keep the campus safe and free from. So those things are gender discrimination, sexual harassment, stalking, dating and domestic violence, and sexual assault. And so that this Title IX law shapes the sexual misconduct policy. So students can violate the policy, they're not violating the law. So there is a difference there. So the Title IX law is what kind of dictates or shapes our sexual misconduct policy. So as the law changes or as different guidances come out or different regulations are released from the government, then our sexual misconduct policy will change just a little bit. As Title IX coordinator, my first and foremost, most important thing is case management. So students will come to me if they've had an incident of sexual misconduct, if they're feeling uncomfortable on campus, if they're in some type of hostile environment because of an incident of sexual misconduct. They're going to come to me, and I'm going to help them discover some options that could help keep them in school. So to help them to be able to participate in their educational activity as they should be able to, or as they did before the incident. I also do training, so training just like this. So you are an employee of Flagler and you are listening to this video because you have responsibilities and obligations under Title IX and under my policy. I also do education events for students, so it could be things that my office sponsors, or it could be in partnership with another office or another student group, but constantly doing education. And then there's some online education as well. I also deal with some equity management. So some people might think of Title IX and think about athletics right off the bat. So that's where the equity management comes in. Athletics and other programs, if somebody is feeling discriminated against on the basis of their gender from the program or from participating in the program, then they would come to me and they could file an allegation or a grievance through me. I also have some government obligations, so you might know about the Clery Act or the annual security report. Those are some statistics from my office. Will go into those reports, and then I'll report to the Department of Education's Office of Civil Rights. So I said this before, but I'll just go ahead and kind of say it again. The purpose of what I do, and why it's important for you to understand the different things that I deal with, is because you're responsible for reporting any of these actions if they are reported to you. So if a student comes to you and tells you about an incident of sexual misconduct that falls, under any of these, right here, ooh, my drawing is not very good, but any of these things, then you will have to report that incident to me. So like I said before, you're a mandatory reporter. If a student discloses any of these things, then you must report it to me. So I just wanted to go over, what do those things mean? So I can give you a list and I can tell you that, if anyone reports any of these things, then you have to tell me, but what are those things? So all of these things, these definitions can be found in the sexual misconduct policy, which is something that I will link at the end, and we'll also add to this video. But dating violence and domestic violence fall under sexual misconduct. The reason that I talk about dating violence is because the type of student at Flagler, or at least at Flagler and the St. Augustine campus, they are generally traditional students who are not married, they're not living with a significant other, they don't have kids. And so that's why I talk a lot about dating violence, because our students are going to have more instances with dating violence than they will with domestic violence. So it's violence committed by a person who is or has been in a social relationship of a romantic or intimate nature with a reporting party. A reporting party in this instance is somebody who's reporting an incident. So it could be a student who's talking to you, somebody who's coming to me to report an incident. So it includes but it's not limited to sexual or physical abuse. And then domestic violence is similar to dating violence. It's just a different, you have to have a different relationship. So it either has to be a current or former spouse, somebody who the victim shares a child with, or a person living with or who has lived with the victim as an intimate partner. The next one is stalking. So some people don't recognize stalking as sexual misconduct, but stalking is defined in our policy as engaging in 2 or more acts directed at a specific person that would cause their unreasonable fear, that would cause a reasonable person to fear for their safety or the safety of others. So this is a situation where somebody is saying that they are starting to see somebody in a lot of different places. If they go to a bar, the other person is there. If they go to Target, they're there. If they go to the dining hall, that person is there. This could be an instance of stalking, but at the same time, the person who is being stalked has to be kind of in fear of their safety for it to be considered stalking. That is not a judgment I need you to make. That's a judgment that I can make. So if a student expresses that they're starting to see somebody everywhere, they feel like they're being stalked, send them to me. It is not up to you to ask, what type of stalking? Is it 2 or more acts? Are you in fear of your safety? Don't worry about all of that. Send them just directly to me. Another one is sexual assault. So sexual assault is, it encompasses non-consensual sexual contact, which most people would think of as fondling, and then non-consensual sexual intercourse, which is rape or any type of penetration that is performed without consent. Sexual exploitation is another thing. So sexual exploitation, sexual intimidation are 2 things that I don't necessarily pull out and categorize specifically when I do the long lists, but they are covered under our sexual misconduct policy. So exploitation is the act of taking non-consensual, unjust sexual advantage of another person for one's own advantage. And then intimidation is threatening to commit a sexual act upon another without their consent. And then sexual harassment is the thing that I see probably the most, it's an unwelcome conduct of sexual nature, and any unwelcome sexual advances, requests for sexual favors, and then there's some examples down here. So efforts to develop a sexual relationship, commentary about someone's body, sex-charged teasing, flirting, or joking, and then intimidation, bullying, aggression, hostility, that's based on gender or gender stereotyping. So gender discrimination is actually a form of sexual harassment. So if somebody is being made fun of because of their gender identity or their sexual orientation, then all of that falls under sexual misconduct as well. It might not be sexually charged, but it's attacking their gender. So therefore it could be gender discrimination. So when a student comes to you, I like to recommend that you have a mandatory reporter conversation with them. Sometimes you can see, or you can tell that they want to tell you something that's hard for them to talk about. I always recommend, if you can stay away from the words mandatory reporter, I always tell people to do it. If you can't, it's no big deal if you call yourself a mandatory reporter. But if you can have a conversation with a student who comes to you, say they come into your office and they're crying, or they're crying after class, and they start to say something like, oh, there's just something that happened to me. I always suggest, or try to suggest, that you should tell them as soon as you can that you're obligated to report any instances of sexual misconduct to the Title IX coordinator. So this allows them to have the choice of whether or not to tell you about an incident. So this bullet is what I was just talking about. So if you think a student's about to tell you, just make it best to clear that try your best to make it clear that you are a mandatory reporter. I suggest that if you are a professor, an adjunct, full-time, part-time, doesn't matter. If you teach a class, tell your class that you're a mandatory reporter almost right away, first day of class. I have a statement that you can put on your syllabus. I also think it's in the syllabus template, but if you want to, reach out to me and I can send you that syllabus statement if you haven't seen it yet. So you can say things like, I want you to feel comfortable talking to me. I just have to make it clear that I'll have to tell Jess Coburn about this, or I will have to report this. You can call me Jess. You don't have to call me Miss Coburn. Or you can just say, I'll have to report it to the Title IX coordinator or the Title IX office. Just somehow tell them that you're going to have to report it to somebody. If a student tells you, but then they kind of come up to you and tell you right off the bat, but then they say, no, but I don't want you to tell anybody, you're still obligated to tell me. So just explain to them that it's your duty to make sure you're keeping the campus safe, or your help keeping the campus safe. And you're still going to have to report it to the Title IX coordinator, to me. So here I say, jokingly, blame it on the law, like, oh, I have to do it. You can blame it on me. You can blame it on whoever you want. Don't take the fall for it. But you do have to report these instances. You can also submit a care referral. So you should be told about care referrals at some point in your training, or at some point in your career, hopefully sooner. And so you can also submit a care referral to this website. So it's just flagler.edu/care. And the care coordinator can reach out to the student. The care coordinator is also a mandatory reporter, so anything you submit to care, I will kind of talk with her about. Here you see an image of a faculty staff guide and a student resource guide. So these will be readily available to you. I have them, in a bunch of different offices on campus. I have them in my office. Your assistant dean should have some. Dr. Vandenhouten should have some. They should be in a lot of different places on campus, but if you can't find them, I always have them, so please come to me and you can get them from me. But what this is that I understand that for some people it's not a comfortable situation to have conversations like this. So what this guide does is it coaches you through this conversation. And first and foremost, it is a perforated card, and so that's why you can kind of see the little dots. But it's meant for you to fold in half and rip apart. So you physically give the yellow side, the student side, to the student, and then you keep the green side. I always suggest to read through it at least once before you have to use it, just so you don't feel like you're having to like read off the card. But still, if you have to read off the card, that is completely fine. But so this is the front side, or what's considered the front side, but it's what you need to know now, how to use this card, and then what to say after you give the student a resource guide. So once a student tells you about an incident, then that's when this card should come out. So, okay, I have resources for you, rip it in half. This is when you tell them that you're a mandatory reporter, you tell them about their resources. The only thing that I want you to worry about is the now. What can I do for you now? Do you need to go to security? Do you need to be connected to health services? What can you help them with right now? This is the back side. So when after this is torn in half, I have suggested or given you some actions to take after the conversation. So contacting me. You must disclose the student's name and information that they gave you. This does not mean that I want you to be an investigator. This just means that if a student tells you that they got in a fight with their significant other, that's all I need to know. You don't need to ask them what happened, how did it start, what did they do. I just want you to tell me whatever the student told you without any prying on your part. If the student showed signs of distress and your interaction kind of left you feeling uneasy, then please submit a care referral. You can submit a care referral and she can talk to me. I actually suggest that you submit a care referral and you tell me at the same time, just so where everybody's on the same page and nothing gets lost. And then if there are any questions that you have, so if a student came to you and you're not quite sure that it fits in Title IX, or you're not quite sure it should be reported to me, then just call me and let's have a conversation, or send me an email and just say like, hey, this is what just happened. I'm not really quite sure where it goes. Just please reach out to me, and I can, if it's not me, I can give you the right contact information to help the student, or the right resources to help the student. So this also addresses why you need to report. I know that students trust their professors, and they trust them with a lot of really confidential personal information, but it is part of the law, it is part of our policy. We're ensuring that students are safe on campus and they have access to all the resources that they need. It helps to identify any trends of behavior around campus, and then first and foremost, it just helps to keep our campus safe. And then that faculty staff side, you have some contact information. So on this card specifically, my location is wrong. So I have moved to the Student Center and I am in room 218 for the Student Center. But the cards that you will have are updated with my new contact information. This is just what it looks like torn apart, so you can see that you can give that student resource guide, the yellow side, you can physically give it to the student, and then that faculty staff guide you can keep for yourself, so you can make sure that you're following up with me and you're doing everything that you need to do to help the student. So you are a mandatory reporter as faculty. Most staff are. There are only two types of people on campus who are what I consider non-reporters or confidential resources. So I'm obviously a mandatory reporter. Faculty, all staff, all resident advisors, along with community advisors and resident hall directors. they're all mandatory reporters. So those are student positions. Those are the only student positions on campus who hold the mandatory reporter title. Security officers are also mandatory reporters, as well as any care referrals put through. So the care coordinator is a mandatory reporter. The only confidential or non-reporting people on campus are the counseling center, so all of the counselors and the administrative help in the counseling center, as well as health services. So all of the nurses and doctors in health services and the administrative help in health services are all non-reporters or confidential employees. They are all bound by HIPAA, and so they, by law, will not report anything to the college that they are told. There are a couple instances where they will report things to the police or to the hospital. Those are instances where a person is in danger of themselves or others, and then they are obligated to report those things. But any instances of sexual misconduct, they are not required or actually able to report those. So the first thing that a student is going to ask is, you're going to tell them that you have to report the incident to me, and they're going to say, well, what's going to happen now? What's she going to do? So the first thing that I do is I almost immediately reach out to the student. I generally, if I get a report at 4:30, I generally will wait until the next day to reach out to the student, just so they don't have to kind of wait. But I try to reach out to students immediately and see them that same day. So, or the next day, or, whenever they want to come in. So I'll schedule an in-person meeting with them. I like to meet with every person in person. And in the meeting, I'll talk to them about their options. So they have a few different reporting options. So this is helpful for you to know, because if somebody accidentally tells you about something, or they really only feel like they need an academic accommodation because of an incident, then they're going to want to know what different types of options they are. I don't expect you to know these options like the back of your hand or my hand like I do, but it is helpful for you to be able to kind of prepare them for what I'm going to talk to them about if they're feeling a little stressed. So the first option is that they can file a formal complaint. And that formal complaint will initiate an investigation, and it will have an outcome. So this is where there's potential discipline or sanctioning for the other person. This formal complaint looks at the facts and looks at information given to us or the college or the investigator, and it compares it to our policy and tries to find out if there's enough evidence to determine a violation of our policy or not. So that's what this formal complaint is looking at. Is there a violation of the policy? The second one is considered early resolution. So this is an instance where a student, if a student feels annoyed by another student, or if they are if there's somebody in class who's telling inappropriate sexual or gender charged jokes, then this is appropriate for an early resolution. So what that means is that somebody will come to me and say, hey, this student is really offending me. It's causing a lot of problems in my class. I can't focus because of their jokes. But I don't want to go through an investigation. I just need help handling it. Then that's where I can either give the student the tools to ask the person to stop and to talk them through that conversation, or I can meet with the student and say, hey, maybe think about what type of jokes you are saying, or you say them in the right audience. So that's what an early resolution is called, or an early resolution looks like. They can also request for confidentiality. So if a student tells you something, you tell them you have to report to me, and the student was like, well, I don't want to do anything and I'm not going to talk to her. That is completely fine. I do like to talk to the students. I'll reach out to them. I give them this option for request for confidentiality because If they don't want to do anything, if they don't want to go through the process, that is their right, and they can make that decision. I have the ability, if I feel like an investigation needs to be done, or that the action that this person did is affecting the campus community as a whole, or if it's creating some type of hostile environment, I have the option and the ability to move forward if I want to, no matter what. But students also have a right to request for that confidentiality and ask me not to. And I have an extensive conversation with them about that, and which is, it's almost impossible for you to talk about during this training, but it is an option for them to, for me to not do anything. The sexual misconduct process this is what it looks like very plainly. In the policy, it's like a 20-page process, but to really strip it down, this is what it looks like, and this is if your student asks about it and you want to try to be able to tell them, then you can talk to them about this. So the report is what we just talked about, and so if a student comes to me and says, yes, I want to do a, so before we were, I can't go back, but before we were talking about the formal allegation that goes to an investigation, that's what this is. So they come to me and they want to report a formal allegation. They feel like somebody broke the policy or violated the policy, then they're going to report it to me. I'm going to assign them an investigator, or sorry, excuse me, I'm going to assign them an advisor. And that advisor is trained through the college to know the policy frontwards and backwards, to be able to answer questions about process. Advisors are not advocates, but the students can also have an advocate. It's just there's only one person that can come with them to the interviews. So if they want their advocate to be their advisor, that's totally fine. If they want to hire an attorney as their advisor, they can do that too. They're just allowed to only have one person in the interviews with them. So once an advisor is assigned, then an investigator will reach out and will start to do interviews and gather facts. Once the interviews are over, then the investigator will write an investigative report and send it back to me or whomever the assigned Title IX coordinator is. I will look at it and I'll make a determination on where it should go. So if there's just not enough evidence, or there's just not enough information, or if everything was true in the investigative report and it still wouldn't reach a violation of the policy, then the allegation is closed. It doesn't move forward. If there's enough information or enough evidence that there's a possible policy violation, then it could move forward to a formal hearing, which is in front of 3 trained faculty and or staff members. And then the last one is that the parties can agree to an informal resolution. So in that informal resolution, they have to, agree on sanctioning. The responding party or the alleged person has to take responsibility. And then that it's kind of worked out with the Title IX coordinator how to move forward. Some people ask about jurisdiction. With the new guidelines coming out, the jurisdiction could change, but right now, and probably in the future, our jurisdiction is anywhere. So as far as the area, the location doesn't matter. If the incident, and this is again not something that you need to worry about. You don't need to worry about where it happened or what's going on, but if the action is bringing a hostile environment back to campus, then that's where it falls under the sexual misconduct policy. So it doesn't matter if an incident happened in France while students were on study abroad, or it happened in New York while the students are on spring break. if both parties are coming back to campus and it's creating a hostile environment on campus, then that falls under the sexual misconduct policy. It doesn't matter where the act happened. For jurisdiction on a report or over a reporting party, anybody can report anything. So if a current student is dating a non-student and our current student hit their significant other who's a non-student or was abusive towards that non-student, the non-student can still report to me because we potentially have somebody who, who's dangerous on our campus or who could be a danger to others on our campus as the current student. So anyone can be a reporting party. The responding party is where we have some limitations, or I have some limitations. So the responding party is kind of what I consider anybody the college has quote unquote control over. So employees, students, contractors, vendors, alumni, even kind of people who we can put some restrictions on. Those are all appropriate responding parties. If we flipped that other situation around and a current student was being abused by their non-student significant other, we can give our current student the resources to help. We can, help them go to the police, or we can help them figure out what to do, connect them with the Betty Griffin Center. But we don't have, the right or the power or to discipline that non-student person because we just hold nothing over them. And so that's why the responding party or the alleged person is somebody who the college has to have control over. So here's some common myths about Title IX, and I did talk about some of these things, but some people think that it's just for women, and that's not true. Like I said before, it's for anybody, all gender identities. Some people think it's just for athletics. So if you grew up in the athletic world like I did, you think that Title IX is just for athletics. But while Title IX did some really great things for women in sports, it's not just for athletics. Some people think Title IX is only for sexual violence, which is also not true. So sexual harassment, gender discrimination, but also the athletics and the programming equity all falls under Title IX. Some students don't want to report because they were breaking a college rule. So if there was underage drinking, if there was drug use, if there was, inter-hall visitation, some students don't want to get in trouble for those, breaking the student code of conduct. So therefore they don't report. There is an amnesty policy in the sexual misconduct policy, and it essentially just says that any minor student code of conduct or student handbook violations are or will be kind of excused, just so we can help the victim or help the person who could be suffering an incident of sexual misconduct. The last one is that people don't want to report because somebody might try to seek revenge, or someone might try to seek revenge if they report on behalf of another student. And we have a retaliation or a prohibition against retaliation. So it means that nobody can or should be able to kind of get back at or retaliate towards somebody who reported or somebody who is a witness or even someone who is giving information to the investigator to kind of help figure out what happened. So if a student feels like they're being retaliated against, they should contact me as soon as possible. So my expectations of you as a instructor at Flagler is to have open, clear communication with me. If you have any questions, just pick up the phone and call me, come to my office, email me, do whatever you can to get a hold of me, but just try to have open and clear communication with me. I like constant feedback. So if if you hear of anything, or if you're wondering, what happened to your student, while I can't tell you exactly what's going on, I can probably put your mind at ease a little bit, or I can help walk you through something. But just any constant feedback for my office, I'm always looking for. If you hear a rumor or any grumblings about Title IX, go ahead and let me know. If you see anything on social media where somebody is complaining about the process, or even if they just bring up sexual misconduct in general, let me know. I like to kind of get ahead of rumors and to know what's going on social media. So just send it to me in an email. This is just a reminder that romantic relationships with students are prohibited. So it's in the faculty handbook. It's also in the staff handbook. So you cannot have any romantic relationships with students. There's a power differential, therefore it's non-consensual, and that's why it would be handled under Title IX if you did have a relationship with a student. And first and foremost, just be a support system for the Flagler community. You're there, you're an instructor, they look up to you, or a professor, instructor, they look up to you. You're with them all the time, they respect you, and so if you can just please be supportive as possible for your students. Here's my contact information. That location is wrong. I'm so sorry, I need to update this. So again, my name is Jessica Coburn. I am actually in the Student Center in room 218. And so that's the second floor of the Student Center. And then my email and phone number are right on this, but contact me if you need anything. If you have any questions about this, just let me know. And I look forward to working with you. Bye.